Senator Cassidy.
Mr. Guston, I read your report, and so I'm going to disagree now, not because I disagree with you, but I find it more profitable to probe as opposed to merely agree. Obviously, a challenge facing our society is finding a cure, treatment, something for Alzheimer's. If such is developed, the federal government will be probably the sole purchaser thereof. There'll be a few on private insurance, somebody at 60, but let's just assume 95%. Now, the issue, of course, is whether monopsony purchasing power on behalf of the government would give a return less than sufficient to incentivize development. We have some examples of that. In the Medicaid program, just about every Medicaid program in the nation, except maybe Wyoming and Alaska, pays their providers below cost because they can. And it is a way to give a benefit without necessarily the expense of actually paying for. So what if there was a future government that said, listen, we got to take care of all these Alzheimer's patients, but we don't want to pay you pick the number, $100,000 a year that the drug company wants. We're going to pay you $10,000, and if you don't like it, lump it, because we're the only person that purchases. That would have a chilling effect on the drug company, but would it have a chilling effect on the venture capital required at the outset in order to develop the new therapy? Now, I pose this, kind of long-winded, apologize, just to get your thoughts on that, then I'll go to you, Mr. Holtz-Eakin. Yeah.
I'm sorry. With regard to Alzheimer, you point to a critical issue. As the population ages, the baby boomers become eligible for Medicare and the likes. The average person over 65 spends 3 times what a person under 65 does, so it is a critical issue. The question you raise about the impact on development, if the government or any supplier comes in and says this is all we'll pay, if that pay is if that charge is not rationally set, it will indeed cause firms to not invest in research, and it will cause venture capitalists to not support the funding that the firms need. So that's one reason why it's, I think, so much better to let market forces operate here to the extent they can, rather than to have the government step in and just set prices.
But if we allowed all the federal agencies to combine to purchase, and if federal agencies would end up paying for, maybe Medicaid as a portion, 95% of that drug that truly would give monopsony power, they would really be able to dictate a price.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, private insurers provide like half of the insurance in the country, so there's a private insurance market that will be stabilizing.
Now, the reason I say that, though, for Alzheimer's disproportionately affects those 65 and above.
And it would affect retirees that were in private insurance plans. But without question, that the costs have to be set at a reasonable level. I come from an industrial world where our biggest customer was the government. It was basically a monopsony. And there's still a stabilizing fact, and that is that the government wants to be able to get treatments for these diseases, just as the firm selling the treatments wants to be able to sell them. So I would not be that concerned about the particular issue you raise.
Ms. Douglas?
So imagine that it's essentially coming through the Part D program. What we'd like to see happen is the drug gets developed, it gets put on the market, it gets provided to Alzheimer's patients, and it's initially a monopoly, and it costs too much, and people scream and yell, and not much the prescription drug plan can do about that. So competitors recognize that there's a lot of money to be made here, and they enter with a competitor drug.
Under status quo.
Under status quo. And if, in fact, we start doing value-based purchasing, they want to make that drug better and might keep people in remission longer and might improve the quality of their lives better and And that'd be a much better product, and now you'd have a beneficial competition, and that first drug wouldn't be able to exploit everybody. If you have a monopsony buying, setting a fixed price based on no information about the actual efficacy or market conditions, you run the risk not only of not getting the first drug, you don't get the second one or any subsequent drugs. And that's the danger.
Okay, I yield back, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy.